Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner, and it is a beautiful day here in Northeast Florida. I hope wherever you are, there's no fire, there's no torrential rain, there's no
Snow.
avalanche of snow or anything, and that your weather is as beautiful as mine is. But Dr. Kane, I have to tell you, I went through a time, and I wanted you to talk about it real quick before we get into it. It seems like there's been a surge in RSV, flu, and COVID lately. Am I wrong?
You're right. That was a bigger, we call that a triple demic. And that was a bigger fluctuation in it, mainly with kind of evenly divided a month of, maybe 6 weeks back, 6 to 8 weeks back. And then we knew at that time that wasn't even the peak of flu season. We're coming up on the peak of flu season. What we're beginning to see is a little bit more flu, more so than the other two. And the flu is the one that's really kicking butt with a lot of people. There's also a norovirus going around that people are picking up. Traditionally, we've been picking up been seeing a lot of the norovirus on cruises and stuff of that nature, where you got a confined relationship. Well, now that it's cold, a lot of people staying inside. A lot of this stuff is being passed around, and people still going to church. And I told one of my going to church without mask, and you can hear over in that corner over there somebody coughing. You can hear look at up on the pulpit somebody coughing. Look in the choir somebody's coughing, and so never really know what to deal with. I had one patient today, and then I'm gonna quiet that down. I had one patient today, or a couple of patients today. They said, "Dr. Kane, you still wearing your mask?" I'm going like, "Yep," and you should have wore it in here. I said, you coming in a place where a bunch of sick people at. Don't you think it's a little smart idea to protect yourself from that illness from sick people? You should be wearing a mask, even more than me. But I come in contact with a lot, and some of them ain't wearing the mask, so we don't want to pass it on to our patient. But I want our patients to be wary. They go to other doctors' offices. They may not be as careful as we are, but they're going to pass it around. And I got a bunch of old people, and they don't need that kind of illness. You young guys may be able to handle that. Okay. I'm sorry. I wasn't talking about you, Tyrone. I was talking about Mr. Thomas and Miss Turner.
But I know you was talking about me.
No, I actually am, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I'm actually getting over one of those. So I will probably be coughing throughout the podcast because it seems like it's taking longer than usual to get past this. And I'm usually real careful about wearing my mask, but of course when I went on vacation, and when I went into a crowded restaurant, I took my mask off, and the next day, Dr. Kane, I started feeling bad. But enough about me. I'm excited.
Yvonne, let's go get our mask in, because if she gonna be coughing on this podcast, I don't want us to catch anything, man. Go get your mask.
I just put mine over my Mac. You can't see it, but I just put it over the Mac just now. So,
well, I'm excited for tonight's discussion. But first, I would like to recognize our behind-the-scenes technology wizard, Tyrone Jackson. How are you doing this evening, Tyrone?
Doing awesome. Thank you for asking.
What is that behind you? Too short? I mean, what is that? I'm sorry. What does that say? Oh, support. Oh, okay.
Oh, like
all I saw was the O-R-T and the S. I'm like, what is that? Too short?
She said, do you know who Too Short is? She said that so naively. I don't think she know who T-Short is.
We listen to Dana Chappelle.
I do. But let me stop being silly because we have a serious conversation. Joining us this evening is Javon Thomas. I'm excited that Javon is joining us. Partly, Dr. Kane, I have to say it because he's my little but not so little cousin. It's so funny how you have relatives you've never met, right? Other than virtually and over the phone. And Javon is my little cousin that I've never met in person, but his mother and I grew up like sisters. So I'm excited to have him join us this evening. And Javon he's a young man that has had an interesting career. To say that you've retired and he's still young is just a blessing, right? How are you doing this evening, Javon?
I'm doing very well, very well. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Well, it was coming in a little in and out, so hopefully we won't have any issues with your technology. But tonight we're talking about managing anxiety and uncertainty. And Dr. Kane, I'm gonna start with you because as a primary care physician, are any of your patients being a little anxious or nervous about maybe losing their jobs or any of the uncertainty that's happening as a result of the new administration in Washington?
The answer to that is emphatically yes. I have some people, just to make sure everybody remembers, I'm basically primary care. The bulk of my patients are definitely 40 and over. I have a huge 65 and over population. And so those that are 65 and older, a lot of them remember what they went through so-called back in the day, okay? When people started talking about referring to when they were, and I was telling my patients, and I kind of primed them for this because I knew that this may come up, may happen. I kept telling them, they talking about take the country back. I always said back to win. And so true to form, it is a back to win. Pre-60s is a lot of what we're trying to see. They're trying to turn back that clock and erase history, erase us to whatever degree. And, a lot of those guys that are over 65, especially over 65, they've been, they got some experience with this. I experienced it. I'm over 65. I experienced some when I was growing up, and I kind of know what to expect. That don't mean I like it, but I know what to expect. I'm not as anxious as it is about like others. I'm angry more so than anxious because, I just learned how to deal with anxiety that may come up, over the years. But a lot of people can't do that. And so, when I did try to prepare a lot of them for what was about to happen or what I felt was about to happen. And true to form, it did. I tried to make sure they got all their medical needs, as much as medical needs as they that was going to be coming up, concerns that were going to be coming up. I tried to make sure we got all that done so no one would be out there trying to get things from a medical perspective, get those things accomplished, things anywhere from eye exam and seeing a cardiologist and colonoscopies and stuff like that. Even surgeries that people that I knew needed surgeries, I'm trying to hurry up and get that done before the administration start getting it hooks into our safety net. And they're really putting their hooks into the safety nets. So I'm seeing a lot of anxiety from that. Now, I was seeing anxiety, and Mr. Thomas can talk about this even more. Some people have real anxiety, because of situations that are there. Others, they kind of create the anxiety in themselves that we might call overly concerned. And then we have some that say they're anxious and all they may be drug seeking, if I had to put them into those three categories. So we have to try to figure out, especially that latter one, that's not what I'm into. I'm trying to really take care of my patients and make sure I provide them with anything that I have available to help them get over the anxiety. And drugs are not one that I will use to a great degree, because they can easily become addicted to the drugs. But there are times that you might need to give a little sprinkle here and there, and but quickly as you can, take them off.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. And Javon, before we get started, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and then let's delve into the conversation about anxiety and uncertainty.
A little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Washington, D.C. Did 20 years in the Air Force as a medic. I've been around the world. I played professional basketball while I was in the military. That was very exciting. Right now, I'm currently living in San Antonio, Texas. That was my last duty station. And I have been practicing as an LPC since 2021. So I have an extensive career being around people.
And what's an LPC for our audience?
LPC stands for Licensed Professional Counselor. A lot of nicknames in the industry: therapist, counselor. Those pretty much the main things. But for the professional term is licensed professional counselor.
What drew you towards this particular profession? Was a result of your military background and what you saw, how folks were feeling, that PTSD, or what drew you towards counseling?
What drew me towards becoming a therapist was my passion for basketball, and then how my degrees were lining up. So my passion for basketball was to be a coach after my playing career. And then as my degree started lining up and started taking shape, it took me to not the NBA, but to the LPC route. And sometimes things don't go the same way that we want it. And next thing you know, I was doing more studying psychology than I was doing trying to get to the NBA. And it just gravitated and created its own self. And then here we are today. So my path was to get to the NBA as a coach, and I ended
the ball didn't bounce down the court that direction, huh?
I took more liking. I really started in college. I really started really learning what I was actually doing on the court with my players, and it was translating so much. So the more I poured into psychology, I got more of a passion for psychology. I mean, I still love basketball. I mean, that's gonna be hands down. But that's how they we always have this saying, let it build itself. Don't chase it. Let it build itself. Let it build itself. And I just stepped back and I just kept letting it build itself. All the opportunities, all the windows kept opening, the basketball windows kept closing, more psychology windows open, and it just started growing its own legs.
Who do you, when it comes to those persons who are seeking counseling or therapy, are they more females than males? I already know the answer, but how do you encourage men to seek mental health therapy or counseling?
I do a lot of my encouraging through social media, but here's one thing. Clients come in waves. So right now I have a big wave of male clients. So how I say that, you got to let it build itself, advertising, and then see who comes. But yes, females do primarily come seek counseling, but right now I have a big wave of male clients coming into me right now.
Are you finding
you said females rarely come to see counselors?
No.
I misheard it. I just want to make sure I straightened it up. Okay.
All right. Javon, you'll get used to that with him.
So obviously, Javon, without disclosing what your patients are saying, are you seeing people? Or you also? I'll ask you the same question that I asked Dr. Kane. are you having folks who are feeling nervous about some of the things that are happening in Washington, or are the things they're coming to see you are just about normal day-to-day coping with those challenges in life?
Yeah, right here in San Antonio, I've been here 9 years. I've really, there's not much politics going on in the city, and
in the city.
it's almost like it doesn't exist. Like this place has its own problems and issues. So everything going on Capitol Hill is like, okay, well, we still trying to figure out how to make it day to day down here.
Yeah, I see that. So how would you define anxiety and uncertainty from a mental health perspective?
Oh, anxiety is, from a mental health, is increased worry, being on guard for things we can't control. May take some physical symptoms like sweating, stuff like that. Just the overall nervousness and just worry about things that can't control. That's the main thing for anxiety.
You always tell people that I try to avoid things that threaten my peace. And, you know, I really work on, lately, I've been really working on protecting my peace. That's been my thing lately, because as you mentioned, you know, worrying about what's happening on Capitol Hill versus those things that are happening right in front of you. By the way, that question was not meant for you to sweat from it, by the way. You said, you know, from sweating. I don't want you to have any feelings of anxiety from the potential questions I'm getting ready to ask you, Javon.
No, it's 85 degrees here in San Antonio, and
Oh, wow.
I forgot to turn my AC on, and I'm feeling it.
Oh, wow. Oh,
And,
my
and
goodness.
let me put in there, Javon is an ex-basketball player, and we eat anxiety for breakfast. We know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
Well, Ms. Turner, what I do want to remind our audience is that anxiety can come from many causes, many issues. Medications can cause increased anxiety.
Really? Like
Yeah,
what?
Oh yeah.
certain medications can do it. Illicit drug use, obviously, we know that can. Other neurological diseases, stuff of that nature. There's a lot of anxiety with people who have heart related issues. Some physiologic, and then a lot of it is just because it's heart related issues. That's heart having something wrong with your heart and your brain is so threatening to people. Till whether or not it's the minimal heart attack, as some people talk. The doctor said I had a mild heart attack, versus someone who really just went into a full blown cardiac arrest and the whole 9 yards on that. There is, after the situation, and sometime during the situation, the person really becomes very anxious, and
That makes
because they're afraid of what may happen, or they're afraid of the outcome of that medical condition.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some common signs that someone is struggling with anxiety, even if they don't recognize it themselves?
Oh, you can use me for an example. Just like Mr. Jackson said, Javon may be sweating, he may be anxious. Now, in the moment, I've done this for about 20 years, being around people playing ball, being military. But my body may say, "Hey, I'm a sweat a little bit for you. I'm gonna do my own thing," until the homeostasis comes down and starts to get everything back in line. So some signs and symptoms could be indecisiveness, lots of indecisiveness. It could be jittery, hands shaking, heart pounding. Those are the physical signs. Sweating, avoiding eye contact. More anxiety could be fear. Fear of something that may be normal, which kind of reminds with PTSD. Another thing with anxiety is just things just don't feel right.
One of the classic things that I see sometime in anxiety, may cause anxiety is a speaker anxiety. If anybody can think about the time that they've been asked to get in front of the audience and speak, you get that nervousness, especially when you're not sure, you're not comfortable in terms of speaking to people. Your heart start racing, so you may increase heart rate. Sometimes people get it so bad, I got to go to the restroom. So they may have some loose bowels or stuff of that nature, okay? Sweating is one of those things. Rapid breathing, okay? That we have to sometimes calm people down, especially if we're looking at, quote unquote, possibly anxiety attack. Getting on an airplane for some people can be very anxious, or something even a little bit more common, getting into an MRI machine, because it is so enclosed. Yeah, I know it already.
That would be me.
It is so in your face till people get very anxious about it.
Yeah.
So there are many forms and many things that can cause increased anxiety. But like Mr. Thomas says, a lot of it involves sweating, rapid heartbeats or palpitations, as some people call it. So, you can get GI symptoms, gastrointestinal symptoms, again, nausea, diarrhea, you can get pulmonary or lung symptoms, you get shortness of breath, rapid breathing, and then of course you can get the cardiac symptoms to the point where, you bad enough, other than just a palpitation, to the point you may actually think you're having chest pains or experience chest pains, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, but how much of it is real versus perceived, though?
Ooh,
it's real to them. It's real to them. That's the biggest thing I can tell you, because you go in there and try to tell somebody, oh, you don't really feel fast heartbeats. It's out your mind. So it's real to them. I get the better part. If I can rephrase that question for you. How much is physiologically, actually you can get physiological symptoms, but how much is it that where you have some tangible reasons to cause it, like actual heart attack or stroke? Post-stroke can leave people with a lot of anxiety. So that's a difficult question to answer. As Mr. Thomas said to you, like, ooh, he realized that was not an easy question. But I'll let him try to give his explanation on it.
Well, I want to see what Mr. Jackson had to input because I'm putting it all together right now.
Because what I was going to say is not a certain amount of anxiety good and healthy. Anxiety has also some protective properties. There are certain situations that we go into, it's wise for us to be
anxious about. If you ride down the road and you see a big old fire on the side of I-10, and there's a bunch of people over there burning a bonfire maybe across, I think you need to make sure that that your anxiety tells you that you need to keep driving.
Okay.
People over there that's already trapped in that situation, and then go down the road and tell somebody else about it.
Ooh, y'all brought the Louisville Sluggers out tonight. Okay, all right. I'm going to stay with my thought process with Mr. Jackson's question before I get to Dr. K's question. But yes, a lot of anxiety, situational, coming from the environments. So East St. Louis, historically, it's very public knowledge, it's not a good environment. In order for me to survive in that environment, I'm going to have my head on the swivel. I'm going to have to know who's who. I'm going to have to see what time I can go outside. Hey, street lights is on. We got to get in, okay? So we've made it barriers to our anxiety to survive in environments growing up, okay? Now, where I stay here, my only anxiety is the lady not cleaning up her dog poop when they poop in my yard. So through growing up and through the military to now understanding what anxiety is, also with psychoeducation, because this was my degree path, I guarantee if this was not my path, I probably would have been using those same factors to alleviate my anxiety that I grew up with in the environments where I grew up. So in other words, deeper don't change the stripes. Okay. So now,
Go ahead.
So yes, I do tell my clients, yes, I'm trying to get you calmed down on a day-to-day basis, but let's remember, why do you need to be anxious? And let's focus on those reasons why, and if that's happening. And if it's not happening, then we need to start looking at what's triggering that anxiety. So sometimes anxiety is good, like playing ball. If the shot clock is going down, you got to stay, aware. Same thing, coming to the gym. If I'm playing in a bad neighborhood, yes, I want to go play basketball, but yes, I know that I need to get in my car and go straight home.
Yeah, I think about when Dr. Kane mentioned the MRI. What I had to do when I went in I didn't know that I had anxiety about MRI until I had to get one, right? And what I did is I had to practice deep breathing, and I had them cover my eyes so that I couldn't see what was that machine so close to me. But practicing deep breathing and really, engaging in mindfulness and meditating. I was thinking about, I had just gone to choir rehearsal, so I started singing the song we sang in choir rehearsal to help calm me down and really keep my emotions calm enough that I could go through that. So Dr. Kane, I was glad when you mentioned that sometimes the things that we experience, it's not necessarily, as we talk about the politics or whatever, but the potential of losing your job, a loved one being ill, a diagnosis with your own health or the health of someone else. And just, to me, Javon, all of these things compounding, then, just the uncertainty of life sometimes can get so overwhelming. But in our community, seeking therapy is something that people they don't want to talk about. Some people are religious and they'll go to church and rely on their religion to give them that calm and peace of mind. But then there's a point where you have to know when you may need to seek help from a professional.
Well, you can look at this is one of those, I'm really throwing out there. A spouse cheating can create a lot of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because you're sitting back. I'm the spouse that's being cheated on is when I make this comment. What's she doing? Who is this guy she's with? And she tells you something that don't quite fit, and now you spend a whole lot of time thinking about it, and it can begin to bother you and worry you at work, and it can become very invasive to your normal everyday functions. But somehow you have to learn how to deal with it because you still got to eat and sleep. And in order to be able to do those things, that means you got bills to pay, and that means you got a job to do.
Yeah.
Like, Mr. Thomas and yourself, Mr. Turner, where y'all retired and rich.
Don't believe everything that you hear. So,
or in his case, don't believe everything that's inside your head.
Exactly. If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Javon Thomas tonight. We're talking about managing anxiety and uncertainty. And as we all know, there are so many circumstances and things in our lives that sometimes we don't know how to, or we feel overwhelmed. And we have to know that there are credible resources and people to see. Each week, we like to pause for a moment and allow our technology wizard to share his pause for the moment video. So, Javon, don't go anywhere. We're going to let Tyrone cue this week's, what are we calling it, Tyrone?
Mid-show minute.
Mid-show minute. Take it away, Tyrone, and we'll be right back. Don't go.
Welcome to Podcast for the Truth Mid-Show Minute, where we take time to get a drink and take a breath as we spread news, tell stories, and outright inform you. I don't think people understand the depth of resilience in the African American community. The world feels shaky, uncertain, like a boat on stormy seas we're tossed by winds of change, economic turmoil, social unrest, a planet in peril. These anxieties weigh heavy on us all. But for Black Americans, this uncertainty is woven into the very fabric of our history. We've stared down storms before, weathered hardships that would cripple others. Our story, from forced arrival to ongoing struggle, is one of resilience forged in the fires of adversity. Yet even as we navigate the present, a new question arises. Is America the land of promised dreams, an empire teetering on the brink? This question is not born out of pessimism, but from a clear-eyed view of history. Empires, like seasons, change. Their rise and fall impact us all, especially those most vulnerable. As we face this uncertain future, we must look to the past, to the strength of our ancestors, to guide us. From the ashes of slavery, through the flames of Jim Crow, to the fight for civil rights, Black Americans have known uncertainty intimately. Each era brought its own brand of hardship, its own tests of our spirit. Yet we rose time and again stronger, more determined. Reconstruction brought hope, followed by the crushing blow of segregation. The Great Migration saw Black families seeking opportunity in unfamiliar cities, only to face new forms of discrimination. Each generation inherited the mantle of struggle, and each generation found ways to not just survive, but to thrive. These historical echoes remind us that uncertainty is not new. They teach us that within the struggle lies the seed of our strength. As we face this new era of uncertainty, let us remember the lessons of our past. Let us draw strength from the unwavering spirit of those who came before us. America, the self-proclaimed beacon of democracy, has long held a powerful allure, but cracks are appearing in the facade. Economic inequality widens, political polarization deepens, and the very foundations of democracy seem to tremble. History teaches us that empires rarely decline gracefully. The fall of Rome, the collapse of colonial powers, these are cautionary tales of hubris and overreach. When empires crumble, it is the marginalized, the vulnerable, who bear the brunt of the fall. For Black Americans, this is not just an abstract historical lesson. We feel the tremors of uncertainty most acutely. We see it in the erosion of voting rights, in the persistence of systemic racism, in the economic disparities that continue to plague our communities. Despite the challenges, despair is not an option. We, the inheritors of a legacy of resilience, carry within us the seeds of hope. Throughout history, even in the darkest of times, Black Americans have found ways to uplift our communities, to nurture our spirits, to create joy and beauty in the face of adversity. From the Harlem Renaissance to the Civil Rights Movement, from the Black Arts Movement to the ongoing fight for social justice, our story is one of relentless hope. We have always found ways to resist, to rebuild, to reimagine a better future. This spirit of hope, this unwavering belief in a better tomorrow, is our greatest strength. It is what will see us through these uncertain times. It is what will allow us to continue the fight for equality, for justice, for a future where all Americans can thrive. Let us face the future with courage, with determination, and with the unshakable belief that even in the face of uncertainty, hope endures.
Wow, the wizard did his thing tonight,
I was
didn't
happy
he?
with this one, boy, for sure. Not that I was unhappy with Brett, but
I
I
like
really
how
like this.
it's Black History Month for those who don't know. And I love how Tyrone infused that into tonight's discussion. Great job, Tyrone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Javon, I want to ask you a question. Do you, how do parents recognize, and I don't know if your population or your clients are children or adults, but how do parents recognize when it's time to take their child to see a therapist?
Ooh, that's a really good question right there. Really good. Y'all
We
really
ready.
hitting it with some.
We
Y'all
be
really
ready.
hitting some, with, y'all really. And Dr. Kane, I still got to answer your question too. Because I'm keeping a little right, so I don't want to lose it. Okay, so how do parents recognize when it's time to take my child in? What I am starting to see now is that there's more education in the communities through media, our phones, social media, neighbors, and also I get a lot of referrals from their primary care physician that they say, hey, I can give your child this medication, but we need to go to therapy too. And then they grab their phone and then they find the closest therapist or may get a referral or a recommendation. So that's how. Also, and I love it that this Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they are in tune with media, with mental health, and it is, there's so much mental health from their favorite rap artists or pop artists to their favorite actress. They come in like I'm feeling this way. I'm feeling this way. I'm in my feelings. I got the ick, gives the creeps or something like that. They're on it. They're on it. They'll probably go tell their parents before the parent, because sometimes it's like, oh, nah, get over it, or they'll say you're just growing pains, but you'll figure it out. So yes.
I love what you said.
And also,
you're right. Generationally, this generation and generations are different, because maybe in my generation as a boomer, it was taboo, and in some generations. And that's why I like when celebrities, because that is important to some people, right? Not with me, but there are people who follow celebrities, and if the celebrities acknowledge their situations, then those persons who may be experiencing the same thing will see that if they can do it, I can do it. So I like how celebrities do use their platform to help, for the greater good. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Javon.
Ms. Jocelyn, here's a thought and a question, I guess, to the panel at large. How much of the stereotypical reaction to the need for therapy from boomers was generated because of finances and access to the help?
That probably was it. And then I think the boomers sought help from the church,
Mm-hmm.
and rather than going to a therapist. So definitely access to care, and access to care remains an issue in many communities. Access being whether or not the service is available in their community. Fortunately, therapists and so many other providers are providing services virtually, but their access is not just the availability of the provider, but it's also the coverage of their medical plan.
Mm-hmm.
Does their medical plan cover the therapy? Go ahead, Dr. Kane. You were going to say something?
I was going to say before our technology and the education of the boomers, before all we had was church, and church was the safety net for people whom had issues, mental health issues. The pastor did a lot of that in terms of what was going on. Of course, they relied on the Bible for so much, and what we're looking at, the times that we're looking at now, what they say, how did that phrase go? The basically is referring to how everything must change, but things remain the same, something like along that line.
That's the lyrics.
The more things change, the more they remain the same.
And so we see a lot of repetition with history. Okay, and so when we face the types of moments, when our parents face the type of moments we're facing right now, the church was their therapist, is what I was trying to get to. Religion was the therapy by which we utilized to try to comfort our neighbor, our family, and so on and so on. But in reality, that same religion has been taken and used against us, and may create more anxiety, in all honesty, may create more anxiety. But the problem is recognizing what's causing and what's feeding your anxiety, and that we must look at all aspects of where all this anxiousness is coming from. Are we, you've been going to church, you're a staunch supporter of, this religion or that religion. And then when you run into situations that the religion really doesn't give you an answer on how to handle that problem, now people feel kind of stuck because a lot of them don't feel that going to a therapist is the right answer, because of their, truth be told, because of their religious background. I'm not saying that everybody, just saying you see it.
Well, Javon, let me ask this your question. So as you were going through your studies and you said it kind of found you, did you find others like you of your persuasion, your melon, in those classes with the pathway to becoming a therapist or being someone in that field?
Well,
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, in my graduating class, it was only a handful of us. So it was only a handful of men, and it was only a handful of black men. So out of that handful, it was only a speck. So wasn't many. Yeah, it wasn't that many. It wasn't that many. Even here now in San Antonio, the way that San Antonio is kind of divided and sectioned off, it still isn't that many. So It's really that many, honestly. If I really think about it, for per capita, for the whole profession, no, it's not. It's not.
And it's ironic. It's ironic because most of my patients, they don't want to go see a therapist until I say that therapist look like you and me. Now they have no problem because I made a recommendation to go see that therapist, and that therapist look like us. It's not saying I'm anti-white. It ain't got nothing to do with that. But it's about the level of comfortability of your clientele with listening to, people are biased. We are biased with who we see. Some of us ain't. Some of us need to be. But we can be very biased with who we see and feel like we getting the best of care because they look like us. Okay. A lot of people have a problem going, if you're a woman, may not want to talk to, let me back up. If you're a man, you may not want to talk to a woman therapist.
To a woman.
Okay. I tend to see that more so than a woman being comfortable about talking to a man therapist.
To a man therapist, yep.
And so, but men, they'll talk to other men. It's just not in a hurry to talk to other women. And I'm not here to get into that kind of discussion, But I just wanted to point that fact out.
So,
I want
so
to get back to something before I have to say it, because my day job, what pays the bills, as they say, is I work with a program that was funded by SAMHSA, and that's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and it is recast, and we essentially are building resilience in families experiencing stress and trauma. And I think the most significant part of doing the work that I'm doing now is a lot of people don't recognize two things I wanted to point out. One is people don't recognize that the things that happen to them in their upbringing, those adverse childhood experiences, the abuse, neglect, the household dysfunction, those things that were normal in their home and in their community because it was happening in everybody's community, but it doesn't seem to manifest itself until they get older and start having their own relationships. I wanted to mention that. And secondly, I also wanted to mention, if you are a pastor or a church leader and you're watching the podcast right now, we offer trauma training. It's called faith-based congregation training for churches. So we want them to know how to recognize trauma in their congregants and know when it's time to encourage them to seek therapy. So if you are interested, drop a line in the chat or dial my colleague. She's going to shoot me, 904-648-6098. That's not right. Don't do that. I never remember our numbers. So just drop us a line in the chat or anyway, because
You post that number. Just make sure you post that number and out.
Yeah, if I can remember it. But I can
what
also.
we'll do is we'll put a way for people to contact us in the on the website.
Thank you. But I do want to mention those adverse childhood experiences, because in doing the trauma training, Javon, we've had several people who've shared with us going through the trauma training. And these might be people who, are coaches and mentors. And they've said, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that those things that happened to me in my background were things that have influenced the situations in my life throughout my life. Again, adverse childhood experiences.
Right. And so now, and y'all really, really, really brought the Louisville Slurs. So to put all this together for everyone's concern that y'all brought to the table, the history of seeking mental health in America was only hospitalizations until I would say the Reagan administration. So there was not a Javon Thomas with a storefront that you could just go. There wasn't social media where I'm giving my 2 cents. There was the church. Only people that really went there were the mentally handicapped. You went to the hospital. Other than that, you walked around the streets. Don't forget, I wasn't born at this time, but before me, I was born in 78. Before me, there was heroin epidemic, right?
What did you say? Say it again.
Oh man! Before I was born, there was a heroin epidemic. That changed the DNA of our society. Okay, so going to seek mental health after using that narcotic, now you got what came right behind heroin:
crack
cocaine. So now we still don't have mental storefronts. Okay, we saw what crack did to the neighborhood. Imagine what it did to the brain. Imagine what it did to the population. Right. And that was right after having heroin. So if you was on heroin, you had a kid, next thing you know, the kid jumped into the crack cocaine era. Who knows if the kid survived? Who knows if the parents survived? But after that, we get to the opioid epidemic, okay, in the 2000s. So we had a little break in the 90s. Well, we still really didn't have a break with crack. Now, we start getting more government initiatives. Like, hey, all these hospitals ain't doing nothing. We need a push for more mental health. Here we are now, 2025, and we finally catching up to heroin epidemic.
Wow.
We ain't even talking about civil rights movement. We ain't even talking about the mental health on that. So yes, to answer your answer, Dr. Kane, when you said the church was the only place to go, it was. It didn't exist. It didn't exist. So now 2025.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And 2025, now, like Cousin Jock said, do the parents know to bring it? So now we're talking about the parents were the kids of the crack epidemic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do all those? Yeah, I want to hear this. Yeah.
And while they may not have suffered any physiological effect from their parents using the crack, okay, because it may have been after they were born and they were not subject to the ill effects of crack in utero, meaning during pregnancy. They still had to suffer from the social economic downfalls associated with crack. Okay.
Yeah.
And that was not a priority for our country, to be quite frank with you. You know, CIA introduced crack into the Black society back starting over in LA. You can say whatever they want to. We all know that that's true. They've admitted it. Okay. But it still was not an issue for them until that the opioid epidemic, hit their population. That's when drug abuse and all this other kind of stuff became an issue. Now, the problem is that most of the stuff that we're looking at is being directed toward opioid abuse and so on and so on. Well, I'll be quite frank with you. Most Black folks, we didn't get into opioids. Okay. We needed relief and counseling and help from crack and post-crack related issues. So you may not have been a crack user, but you may have been the
offspring of a crack
user. And now you need that counseling. You need that ability to be able to survive, the social determinant of health irregularities that occur with drug use and crack use. And we still have not addressed that at all.
Wow, this is something else. And I know, as Dr. Kane often says, we touch the surface of stuff. Go ahead, Javon.
So yeah, not to cut you off, but now it's tying all of it together. What Mr. Jackson said, I gotta survive on a day-to-day environment. My stomach growling. Yeah, my anxiety going up. Okay, we can't blame everything mental health on the drug errors, but also anxiety. When I was learning about what happened to Emmett Till, when I heard that they was shooting, the National Guard was shooting people. When I heard that Philadelphia police dropped a bomb on the neighborhood, I'm in school. I was in my 20s. I was in my 20s by then. I read out the history of the boomer. I'm like, yeah, my anxiety gonna be high when I see the police. Then we had to go through all that stuff in 2020, George Floyd. So I'm sitting here like, I didn't know they burnt down Washington, D.C. I was like, man, I said, good Lord, what was going on back then? Yeah, we just was trying to survive.
Yeah.
So now, 2025, putting it all together, we start talking about the economy, the administration. First thing I start thinking about is like, what was it like to have Richard Nixon in office? What was going on? I wasn't alive. All I can say was I had Bill Clinton and I had Barack Obama. I had George W. and I was in the military. So we really didn't get to the politics of things.
But
Yeah, Javon, before we end the show, I do want to ask you a question. How can someone support a loved one who is struggling with anxiety without overwhelming them?
Ooh. Man, y'all about the Sherman tanks out today. Okay.
Let me throw one last monkey wrench into that question.
Okay.
One of the big things we're dealing with today is dementia of our parents. Okay, our parents, our loved ones, could be sister, brother. A lot of people are dealing with dementia, and that is causing a hellacious amount of anxiety with them because of the amount of the need of that individual. Okay, your parent has dementia, a spouse has dementia. You know, you're not just going to throw your hands up and walk away. You know, you try to do everything that you need to do to make their life better, but it put a hellacious amount of stress on the caregivers. So I thought I'd sprinkle a little bit of that into your answer.
Ooh. Okay, so I'm gonna real quick. I'm gonna try to answer this as best as possible with the information that I do have. Is that how about this? When dealing with the loved one or relationship partner, or even the homeboy that you grew up with, who may be suffering from mental health, is education first. Because what we, like we said, as the patient comes to us, this is their reality. So I need to go back. If I'm gonna be in that person's life, I need to say, okay, you're suffering from what? I need to go home, be a better friend. I need to educate myself, because if I don't educate myself, I'm only going to recommend things to him that I only know that can work for me. So if I just educate myself on his signs and symptoms, the same thing as taking care of a diabetic loved one. So if you know that they can't eat sugar all day long, but they do need a little bit of sugar in their diet, then that's more education and less stress. So educate on the mental disorder or the mental issues, or educate on stress. Like, hey, what's stressing you out? Is it homework? Okay, all right, I'm gonna leave you alone. I'm gonna give you your space, and then I'm gonna double check. I'm gonna give you that support. So sometimes just being stressed out is just lack of a social support network. No one understands. I don't want to burden you with what I got going on. Right, we all go through something. We got to talk to somebody. You can't just talk to Hennessy every day. You got to do something else, okay?
Not Hennessy and Grey Goose. For me, it'll be fried chicken and fries.
Well, a lot of people. But he hit the nail on the head. A lot of people is Hennessy, Grey Goose, and a joint, bro.
Yeah.
that brings
or overeating.
That brings the stress way down.
Yeah. Overeating the snacks and stuff. That's like Hennessy and Grey Goose for some people.
Yep.
Right.
Well, listen,
right.
We're at the end of the show, and it did go fast. I know, as it often does. And Dr. Kane has been he's been advocating for an hour and a half show, and I'm like, no, just an hour. We can always come back with part 2. But thank you so much, Javon, for joining us, sharing your insight. At the end of the podcast, we like to give our guests an opportunity to share their final thoughts regarding tonight's topic. So what would you like to share with our audience as we close tonight's podcast?
First and foremost, I love it that it's Black History Month. I love it that I'm there sitting in the position that I am in, given a voice and a platform that I have really fought hard over the course of my 20 years in the military. And I just want to let everyone know that even though it says Black History Month, it's everybody's history, because a lot of times say, well, I'm not Black, I can't celebrate. Yes, you can. I think every Black person in this podcast now will invite everyone to the cookout. Everyone at the office to the cookout. If you choose to come, that's on you. But I believe part of being Black is opening up ourselves to be around everyone, because we know how it felt to not be invited to certain places.
Amen. And any tips for managing anxiety and uncertainty?
Managing anxiety and uncertainty right now is to breathe. Breathe, breathe, breathe. If you need to talk to somebody, it does not hurt. 1 session, 2 sessions, it ain't gonna hurt, because you can't talk the same thing every day. Because I'm sorry, when they say you're gonna get on their nerves, it's literally you are getting on the nerves, and brain is shutting it down because it's the same voice over and over and over. So that's one reason why it's best to go to a trained therapist, and you can't keep going to your homegirl or your homeboy. They're gonna get tired of hearing the same thing. Me, I'm trained for this. This is what we do.
Do you accept insurance in your practice?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Fantastic. So if we have any of our listeners who are in the San Antonio, Texas area, just know that Javon is available for you. So we'll make sure you drop your contact information in the chat, and then Tyrone will add it to our website. So if there are folks, because our audience may have some loved ones in the area who could potentially see you. So thank you. Anything else, Javon, before we move on?
I enjoyed myself. I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed putting a whole lot of things together. I would love for a part 2, because now I got more questions that on top of the questions from Jackson and Dr. Kane, and definitely from Cousin Jock right here. So I enjoyed myself thoroughly. And yes, sorry for sweating. It's a nice day out here, and I was rolling. But then after you sit down, it's like, whoa, it's hot.
No need.
Oh, I have my fan right here. I have my fan right here. Tyrone, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Javon for coming on. It was a pleasure to have you, and it was a pleasure to listen to your insightful information. It's also a warm welcome to see another ex-athlete show that there are a lot of us who went to college and gained more than the ability to bounce a basketball. Okay, so I want to thank you for that. But I think what is really important that we discuss here, the information that came out. First of all, that there is a healthy bit of anxiety that we need to accept. But then we need to also be brave enough to address it when it gets out of control. When we start having physical and mental and emotional things that take us outside of our norm, then we need to have the strength to seek support and help. All right, then. Same thing when we see it in our loved ones. You know what I'm saying? I think Javon said it eloquently, that if a loved one keeps coming to you, you're going to eventually get it's going to eventually wear you down, not because you don't care, but mostly because you're not equipped to process the information. You're now taking the information in as a part of your stress. All right. So have the courage to urge that individual, nudge them, push them, kick them, whatever is necessary, to someone who's licensed and to be able to truly help them with what they're going through. And one thing that came out that we continue to hear, so much of what we go through is tied to trauma. And so we need to be able to look at our lives and understand that we've gone through some things and make a decision that we want to be whole in spite of what we've gone through, and have the courage to seek out individuals like Javon in order to make ourselves better.
Thank you, Tyrone, for that. That was awesome. Thank you for that great feedback. Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts?
Real quick, one thing I wanted to mention earlier when we talked about it, but and I'm talking to my practitioners out there, for people who have an MRI phobia, a lot of times one of the things I will order and ask the technician to do is give that patient a mirror and put it right in front of them. So now they see what's behind them and they don't see that enclosed environment, and it lets them get through that MRI. I just thought I'd throw that out for our medical provider listeners. Okay. I think as a group of people, we need to focus on unity and not instead of division during these times of hard times, because that's what got our parents through a lot worse, a lot rougher times than we experience. I don't care how much you think that today's environment sucks and how bad it is. Just imagine being whipped and using water hoses and the dogs attacking you and backing you in the groin, biting you in the groin, all that kind of stuff. But yet you concerned about your kids like the mother of Emmett Till was. So when you think about all that, you don't want to look in fear, but you want to look in how do we survive this as a family and a group of people. So reaching out to each other and talking to each other winds up being some of the therapy that we all need. Doesn't have to be a specialist leading you on to that. Doesn't have to be Dr. Kane. Doesn't have to be Jocelyn Turner or Tyrone, or in this particular discussion, Mr. Thomas. The other thing is making sure social media creating a lot of anxiety and stress these days. We didn't even get into that. Okay, what these kids, what it's bringing to these kids, and the anxiety, the stress, and all that other stuff, the depression associated with it. So parents, be aware. Family, be aware. As to what your nieces, nephews. I'm talking about the younger ones especially. But still, sometimes you got to talk to your brothers and sisters, your equivalent to your age, and let them know, hey, you got that crap off social media. Don't believe everything you see. Discern the truth for yourself. Do some research. Go do all these different things that you need. Be aware that those people who have dementia in their household, that they're very stressed. As providers, we have to, talk to the caregiver as well, because they are under a lot of stress. And I try to do it all the time. I sit back and I listen to what's going on in the house, and then I'll pull a caregiver aside sometime and ask them, well, how you doing? Tell me what's going on with you. You're not my patient, but you're taking care of my patients. So I need to try to help take care of you so you can continue to take care of my patient and your loved one. Listening is one of the best things you can do when you're not trained. At least listen. You may pick up on a couple of points that might allow you to steer them in the right direction as to where to go get help from, and the fact that they may need additional help other than that. So listen to your family, friends, and especially those caregivers. For Tyrone, Black history is our history. The U.S., it wouldn't be the U.S. without Black folks, and White folks benefit from what we've got going on. So, Black History Month is okay, but we have contributed 24/7, 365, 400 years, to the well-being of this country. So I don't give a damn what they say about a Black History Month. It should be year-round. You should be recognizing what we do and what we have done for this nature. Laughter is one of the best things you can get for anxiety. That's the one thing in my family. We will laugh about most things, and it gets us through. It's gotten us through funerals and the death of loved ones, and so on and so on. And so always think about your fellow man. I do have to go back to one thing. I got to talk about that norovirus real quick.
I want you to end with that. Let me just say my final thoughts before you switch topics, if you will. So if tonight's episode resonated with you, remember that you're not alone. Anxiety and uncertainty are part of life, but with the right tools and mindset, they don't have to control us. Take small steps, be kind to yourself, and seek support when needed. There are some credible websites that you can tap into: the National Institute of Mental Health, the American Psychological Association, Anxiety and Depression Association of America. And for those of us who have the luxury of having a Mayo Clinic nearby in our city, they also, even if you don't, you can go to mayoclinic.org World Health Organization, Psychology Today. You can find a therapist in your area, and of course, check with your health plans with if you're working or not working. But if you have a health plan, check with your health plan to see what resources are available for you in that way. And cognitive behavioral therapy resources. Again, educate yourself, as Javon said, because the main thing you want to do is be kind to yourself, seek help when you need it, and know that it's okay not to be okay. Dr. Kane, your final thoughts again regarding norovirus.
Okay. Well, Fodian, since you mentioned Mayo and everything, a bunch of the hospitals have things about, truth be told, have counseling, anxiety, yada, yada, psychological services. So don't just feel like it's got to be Mayo. Baptist has it. Your physician, especially a primary care physician, can really direct you in terms of where to go and help seek services to other organizations. Norovirus, real quick, is mostly causing GI symptoms like diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, loose stools. Again, that's diarrhea. Not as much respiratory symptoms associated with it. You especially see it in people when they going on these cruises. They come back in one of those norovirus or Norwalk virus or whatever it is, or one of those viruses that causes all the GI symptoms that you heard about on that cruise. So protect yourself, wash your hands, okay? There's not a whole lot of respiratory transmission, but more or less, hand-mouth transmissions, especially hand-mouth transmission. And so make sure you wash your hands and do as much cleansing as you can to keep yourself from ingesting that virus. With that, I want to thank everybody. I really want to thank Mr. Thomas. Thank you, sir, for taking the time out your day and coming on board. Despite that being your cousin, you're still a good therapist. Excellent therapist.
I'm done.
And tune in next week for Pause for the Truth. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. The more people who hear about us, the more we're able to spread the word, spread the good news. We have some great experts on our podcast to share invaluable information. And we really do we try to do our best to identify folks, to help folks deal with the issues that they're dealing with. Again, thank you to our guest, Javon Thomas. Javon, don't go anywhere. Stick around, and we'll see our audience next week. Take care.
And there we have it, another episode of the Pause for the Truth podcast in the proverbial books. Our heartfelt thanks go out to every one of you who took the time to tune in. Mark your calendars. We're here every Tuesday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Feel free to join our community on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. But the golden ticket? Subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's your passport to all our latest episodes and exclusive content. A special mention to the wizard behind the curtain, Tyrone Jackson from Call Tyrone IT Services. His technical prowess and unwavering dedication are the backbone of this podcast. Next week, we'll be back with more. Until then, tell your friends, tell your family about our show. Your support is invaluable. And remember, keep that curiosity alive. Keep seeking the truth.